So here in Ohio, voting rights groups and Governor DeWine pushing back against a suggestion by one of the state's chief elections officials to ban ballot drop boxes. Secretary of State Frank LaRose pitched the idea to legislative leaders last week in a letter that laid out several changes that he wants to enact to protect election integrity in Ohio. Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose is joining me now on the Scott Sands Show. I thought last week your suggestions, as 13 ABC's story put it, were well received and much needed in Ohio and other states. Frank, it's good to have you on.
Well, thank you, Scott. And listen, we run secure elections in Ohio. We really are an example for the rest of the country to follow. And we don't like to make changes in the months leading up to an election. As you know, absentee ballots for our overseas and military personnel start going out in just a couple of weeks. Early voting for everybody else begins just a few weeks after that. And heck, election day will be over in 61 days, 14 hours, and some other minutes. So it's going to be...
Not that you're counting.
Good. Yeah, it's going to be here before we know it. But here's the bottom line. This time of year, we also get these last-minute lawsuits from activist groups that want to try to change things. And in a recent decision, a judge kind of upset the balance that we strike. Our balance that we try to accomplish is making it both easy to vote and hard to cheat. And I think that's what Ohioans want. We've achieved that over the years. And, these so-called drop boxes, it's a relatively new phenomenon. Nobody had ever heard of these things more than, 5-6 years ago. Now every county board of elections has them. It is a convenience, but it brings some risks along with it. Because of this recent judge's orders, there are some decisions I had to make to mitigate those risks. And one of the things that I'm simply suggesting to the General Assembly, and let's be honest, it's not going to happen before this November's election, but going forward in the future, it may be best for us to just get rid of the whole ballot drop box thing and go back to, listen, the easiest way to return your absentee ballot is the way that we did for decades, and that is just put a stamp on it and drop it in the mail.
And even that's not exactly always secure. But the ballot boxes, the drop boxes, are ripe for all sorts of problems, from ballot harvesting to, I don't know, somebody stealing the whole damn ballot box. That's unlikely to happen, but it is a possibility.
Well, and we've seen this in other places. It creates an opportunity for bad actors to do the wrong thing. Imagine you go to a county that happens to not correspond with your political leanings, and you could destroy heck, somebody could drop a firecracker in one or a road flare or something and burn the thing up. Obviously, we'd have them on camera. We'd prosecute them. They'd go to jail for doing that. But that's the kind of thing that can happen, and it creates some unacceptable risks. What I've done to mitigate this, and to be clear, you want to have a Secretary of State that follows the law. I don't get to be the election czar and just make up what I wanted to say. But I've followed the authority that I have to say that county boards of elections are now required to post a sign on their drop boxes that say you can return your own personal ballot, but you can't return other people's ballots. And what that means is if we have you on camera coming up to this thing with more than a single ballot in your hand, then you could be in violation of our laws. And so we're going to investigate that. You can return your own ballot if you want to do that at 2 a.m. or off duty hours or whatever else, then you can do that. But if you've got somebody else's ballot that you are returning, we want to make sure that you're not violating Ohio's ballot harvesting law. And so we're going to ask you to come inside. You got to sign a simple little form that says, hey, I'm returning a family member's. That's legal. You can return your wife's ballot, your kid's ballots, that kind of thing. Or maybe you've been designated by a handicapped Ohioan. They have the right to do that. That's what this court case was all about. And so if somebody that's handicapped designates you to return their ballot, then you just got to walk inside and sign a little form that says that. Again, it's our way of protecting against ballot harvesting and achieving that balance of making it both easy to vote and hard to cheat. And it's undeniable. Ohio makes it easy to vote. There's no excuse for not voting.
And let's compare that to other states. I mean, we have one of the longest periods of early in-person voting in the country. We have extended extended ballot hours on election day. You have the opportunity for absentee voting if you choose. All of these things I think are, and I'm not one of the conspiracy guys that thinks the election was stolen, hacked, rigged, any of those things, but there have been instances of mischief in other states that we've talked about. And was it enough to swing the 2020 election in Michigan or Pennsylvania or Arizona? I don't know. I don't think so, but it's a possibility if we continue to allow it to happen.
Well, life is all about making sure that you balance risk and reward, right? And so, yeah, we want it to be convenient, but we also don't want to open the door to bad guys that could, call into question the integrity of our process. We achieve that balance in Ohio, and we're going to continue doing that. And yes, we make it easy to vote. Heck, if you've been checking your mail recently, you probably got a letter from me. If you're a registered voter in Ohio, we have done what the state's done for now well over a decade. I think it's been 12, 13 years that this has been the practice. And we sent a request form, not a ballot. Certainly, we only send absentee ballots to those who prove their identity. But we sent a request form, simply a blank form, to every registered voter saying, hey, if you want to vote absentee, here's how you do it. Here's the form you can fill out. So we do make it easy to vote, but I'm not going to apologize to anybody. Certainly these hand-wringer, do-gooder, liberal groups that want to accuse me of ballot harvesting, it's nonsense. Ohioans know it. And by the way, there was a poll just a couple years ago, and even among Democrats, something like 85% said that it is easy to vote in Ohio. 90-some% of Republicans said it's easy to vote in Ohio. Ohioans know it's easy to vote, and these groups and all of their, hyperbole and hand-wringing and everything else, people aren't going to fall for it. They know it's easy to vote here.
Meanwhile, you've got some states that are trying to abolish the requirement to show any sort of identification to vote. You have states like Michigan that have been hiring Democrat poll observers on a 7-to-1 ratio compared to Republicans, and that's forcing the Michigan GOP to go to court there. You have instances of shady behavior, let's say, in Pennsylvania that's causing, in many of these now swing states, to cause many people to question the validity of the election results.
Well, and I've entered into a lawsuit against the Biden administration because of their attempt to really weaponize the federal government as a turnout tool for Democrats. They're trying to get federal agencies to do get out the vote efforts effectively. That's not an appropriate use for the federal government or our tax dollars. And so I've been part of a group that has filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration to end that nonsense for sure. Yeah, listen, Ohio's an example for others to follow, and here's proof of that. I'm actually heading to D.C. next week to testify in front of Congress. They want to know, how is it Ohio continues to get this right when other states struggle? Why is it we give you the results on election night and other states take days or even weeks to do that? Why is it that Ohioans can go to bed on election night knowing the results and trusting it? We run our elections so smoothly in Ohio. Here's my little internal goal that I share with our team. We do it so smoothly that even the loser knows they lost. And ideally, sometime around 10:30, 11 o'clock on election night, the loser looks at the results and says, all right, better luck next time. I'm going to call the winner and congratulate them. That's how we run things.
Usually 10:30, 11 o'clock, unless you live in Lucas County.
They've been getting a lot better. And I tell you what, my hat's off to the Lucas County Board of Elections. Now that they're under one roof, and I thank the county commissioners for investing in their new facility. They were previously in something like 3 different buildings. There was all kinds of inefficiency with that, but they're making great improvements, and so kudos to them.
We're talking to Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose here on the Scott Sand Show. Why don't other states? And look, I'm not advocating to federalize the election process. I don't think that's certainly a state's responsibility, but it seems like there should be more standardization between the states. What's working for a state like Ohio should be adopted in other states. Why doesn't that happen? Is it because every other state thinks they're smarter than Ohio or wants to do it on their own and have their own way?
It's not a coincidence that the 2 states that are probably best at securing their elections and finding that balance between easy to vote and hard to cheat are Ohio and Florida. Why is it? Well, Ohio and Florida have both been in the national spotlight for decades. I mean, going back to 2000, the 2000 presidential election, Ohio's been in the spotlight, and as a result, we've improved our practices. We've improved the professionalism of our elections officials and the way that we handle things, and that's why I was elected to be the chairman nationally of the Republican Secretaries of State Committee, and now I'm working to help share those best practices with my colleagues in other parts of the country as well. There are some things the federal government can do, and one of them is to get out of our way. Right now, we don't get the cooperation from the federal government that we should as it relates to identifying non-citizens on the voter rolls. They make us jump through all kinds of hoops to access these federal databases that we should have ready access to. As you know, I've referred over 600 individuals to law enforcement and removed them from the voter rolls because we found non-citizens registered to vote. Now, 600 out of 8 million is a small number, but it's not insignificant. Other states aren't doing that because it's really hard to do, and the federal government does not make it easy.
Well, and we were talking with Pete Hoekstra from the Michigan GOP earlier this afternoon, talking about how many more registered voters there were than eligible voters in the state of Michigan. Another lawsuit the state of Michigan is having to contend with before November.
And that's because of list maintenance. Listen, it's like hygiene. We brush our teeth every day and we work every day to maintain our voter list. I've removed hundreds of thousands of really bad, out-of-date data records from our voter rolls. You know, the left says he's purging voters from the rolls. I'm not purging voters. I'm taking bad data out of the voter rolls. I'm taking deceased voters and those that have moved out of state and non-citizens who never should have been registered in the first place. And again, I'm not going to apologize for keeping our voter rolls accurate. Other states should follow our example.
So the Republican Secretaries of State Association, do you guys get together? Is that? It doesn't sound like it's a banger of a party.
You would be surprised. It's a good group of folks, and it reflects the great diversity of America. We've got the Indiana Secretary of State, who is a naturalized citizen. His family immigrated here from another country. We've got secretaries of state that are fellow military veterans, young and old, and all different types. But what we share is a common mission. And again, that's making sure that the people of our states are able to vote in a convenient election, but also one that they know is accurate. And I'm proud to lead this group. We have a majority of the states have Republican secretaries of state, and I'm proud to say that.
We're talking to Frank LaRose here on the Scott Sand Show. Frank, are you concerned? Are you surprised at all that Governor DeWine seems to be in opposition to some of your policies and suggestions?
I've not had this conversation with the governor. I do look forward to talking to him. I know he's expressed a hesitation to make changes before an election. And by the way, I share that. We don't want to make changes right before an election. And so maybe that's what he had in mind. I made 3 recommendations to the General Assembly for the future for them to consider when they're back in December, late November, or early next year when they reconvene for the new General Assembly. These are thoughtful, smart policies that I think they should take a serious look at. And I look forward to being part of that conversation, including with the governor. And listen, here's a wise statesman, a man that has decades of leadership experience, and I want to hear what he has to say about it as well. But we have not had that conversation yet.
Frank, great to have you on. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon, I'm sure. And we got a long way to go. I should mention this too. I think I heard a story about this. I've downloaded the driver's license app to my iPhone. You can't use that on election day for identification. You got to bring your actual ID.
That's correct. Yeah, you can't use that. You can use a military ID. So go see your recruiter. I'd suggest it.
Thanks, Frank. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Scott.